She is the first woman who joined India's police force and became its highest-ranking female officer. She was then appointed civilian police advisor to the United Nations peacekeeping operations. She's also founded 2 NGOs and is a recipient of the prestigious Raman Magsaysay Award, also known as the Asian Nobel Prize. We met Dr. Kiran Bedi, prominent anti-corruption activist, and began by asking her whether it was hard being a woman in a male-dominated profession.
Not for me. When I joined the service, when it came to physical stamina and mental tenacity, I was a former Asian tennis champion.
Right. Yeah, I mean, and tennis, and I guess you brought the same drive, the same passion to your work as well?
Yes, sports helps that. Sports gives you a bundle of extra qualities, which books alone don't. And I think that worked the right way for me in the service.
And did you always have that goal to sort of, you wanted to rise, or you knew that you had to do more to sort of, I guess, become in a position where you could affect or create more change?
Yes, as a student, when I was growing up in India in the 60s, I was in school in the 70s in university, I was growing up with the goal that I'll join the government to make the difference. And policing attracted me because policing is so effective and well done that it reaches the common man so well. And that's how the uniform, the power behind the uniform, the power to serve, today attracted me as a student. So I'd made up my mind to join the officer ranks, the Indian Police Service. The potential of the service was huge, and I took that potential, the power to prevent. For me, policing stands for the power to prevent. I took it across also all positions I achieved, and I think that's what made the difference. It became unique models of policing, whether it was in police training, whether I did in crime prevention, or I did in prison reforms.
So what were the challenges you faced then? What were some of the greater ones?
Well, biggest challenges I faced were inadequate resources, whether it was human resource or whether it was technology. I think the resources were always inadequate and the expectations were very high. So to meet those resources, I had to continue to co-opt community, co-opt people to provide those resources and work together. And I think one was a challenge. The second, the achievement was an achievement.
Dealing with the people, was that the most difficult?
It is difficult if the people don't trust you and believe you. But it's easy when people have trust in you. And they believe that what you're asking them to do is for their good and that there is no hidden agenda. I found it very easy because I was truly trusted. And I did live up to the trust. So every time you live up to the trust, you sow the seeds of future cooperation for the next assignment.
Well, and you did not bend the law for anyone. I mean, you became known popularly as Kiran Bedi for towing away then Indian Prime Minister Indira Gandhi's car for a parking offence. I mean, when you did that, did you think twice, or you just thought, well, it's clear?
That's how you get the trust. When you are equal for all. So all such instances only increase respect and trust for you. So you get people working with you, for you, and all the time serving for themselves. So this is what these actions actually bring a lot more respect and trust in the service.
Well, you also went on to join the United Nations HQ in New York City as a police advisor to the US peacekeeping operations. When you took on that role, what were some of your objectives in doing that?
Oh, that was objectives. Was every war-torn country where you needed peacekeeping and United Nations wanted to intervene. I was the civilian police advisor to then Secretary General Kofi Annan. This was a world selection. Which is one of the finest positions one could get as a serving police officer anywhere in the world. And when I got that, it had I was involved into 16 peacekeeping missions in Africa, Asia, Kosovo, whether it's Europe, Asia or Africa. It was very interesting, where you had to rebuild the countries, policing from the scratch, like Liberia, like Sierra Leone, like Congo, like Ivory Coast, like Kosovo, like East Timor. These were all countries which were in peacekeeping missions. Cyprus, they were part of our peacekeeping missions.
What were the challenges there?
Oh, you had to... Challenge was again back to resources. But the resources were provided by the international community. And the challenges were, how do you co-opt people again to own and own the models? And that is where I did not know anybody. But when we started to work through those models of co-option, even laying down the law, involving men and women into putting systems back in place, and of course preparing those countries for democracy. I think these are huge challenges where I knew none, and you had to start from a deficit.
Today you're also well recognized as a social activist. You have 2 NGOs. Can you tell us a bit more about them and the work they do?
The two NGOs, one of them is almost going to celebrate Silver Jubilee next year, January. And that reaches out to, between the two foundations called Navjot India Foundation and India Vision Foundation. One focuses on women empowerment, focuses on community development. The other, India Vision, focuses on education of prisoners' children, which is one of the unique models in the country. So between the two, we reach out to over 10,000 beneficiaries a day in education, into vocational skills, into women empowerment, into rural development, into community health, into environment issues. But it's all about underserved communities, whether they're in rural areas, whether they're in the slums or they're in the prisons.
And do you think that's the best way to affect change, by
absolutely
working with the communities?
It's absolutely working with the bottom of the pyramid. So at the top of the pyramid, you have the rich and the educated. But at the bottom of the pyramid, you have the illiterate and poor and uneducated. So that's what we work for, to upscale them in vocational skills. So we begin with vocational skills alongside do education. That is where you're removing them from poverty.
And that was Dr. Kiran Bedi, India's top cop and former police advisor to the UN Secretary General, a social activist who still has his sleeves rolled up, fighting for justice and a safer world. And if you'd like to find out more about her work and the causes closest to her heart, do take a look at her website. It's kiranbedi.org.